Yeah, I'm back. No, your sound's not out. Yes, this update means what you think it means. I broke 100. I'm at 100,511 words. Now, pause a beat, hear me out, let me explain. I'm currently actively writing chapter 39. Chapter 39 in this book is where Eyton leads his brand new organization on their first attempt to attack the hunting society. Now, there's a lot going on here, and one of the reasons I broke 100,000 words so fast is because I made the decision to go to the end and plug in the end scene because I wanted to see what it would do to my word count. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do to my word count, and it brought my word count up over 100,000. So I have the ending of the book written, and I'm working just a little bit further towards the end here. When I look at my plot chart, where I'm actually at is right before the climax. I need Eyton to do a little bit of a practice run with his organization, which is what I'm writing right now, and then he's going to kind of suggest that they do a few more. They'll run a few more little practice rounds, and then they will actually take on the society, which is the climax of this book. And then I've got events on the downfall that I need to hit. I don't have any more official events on my plot chart that are happening on the up. I've hit everything. So I've just got these few small events that are going to lead up to the climax. And then the downfall. And the downfall is 4 events. And the last 2 have already been written. So I have 3 official events on my plot chart left to right, which is the climax, and 2 of the downfall events. And then we're done. So I've got 3 big scenes left to write before finishing this novel. So if I keep going at the pace I've been going, which, I've written 50,000 words since May 8th. If I keep going at this pace, I'm going to finish this really, really quickly here. And I have a 3-day weekend, so I have nothing else to do. So I'm going to try to finish it, which sounds kind of like an impossible task, and yet I won't be completely opposed if I actually do it. Because when I finish No Place Like Tomorrow, then I'm going to jump right into kind of editing the beginning that I had already written for No Hope for Yesterday, which is book 2. Kind of got to edit a little bit of those first couple chapters because of some changes I made in No Place Like Tomorrow. And then, we're on to book 2. So I hope you're enjoying this kind of rapid fire, fast paced journey with me because, man, whoever released the muses onto the world and directed them my way, thank you. I appreciate it. The muses and I have been hanging out and we're getting stuff done. So I would like to do yet another little dramatic-ish scene reading for you. But for this one, I'm going to jump kind of back to the beginning. I'm going to jump back to chapter 12, which I know feels like it's not super far backwards since I'm on chapter 39. But where I'm reading is page 99 and chapter 39 is in the 200s. So there is actually a lot that happens between the scene I'm going to read and where I'm at now in the novel, where I'm going to read in chapter 12 is in the very beginning. So the only 3 characters I have in chapter 12 are Eyton and Valens and Zephyr. Eyton and Valens are not yet bonded to each other. That bond has not been created yet. And Zephyr is still rather against Eyton. She's warming up to him a little bit at this point, but she hasn't decided, he's kind of our human. And kind of taken on that, fine, I hate him, but I love him and he's mine, sort of sibling relationship with Eyton. So I'm going to read to you. They are traveling still. Obviously, they travel pretty much through the whole book, trying to just hide from the hunters. So they have just left a town, a city, really, where they were hanging out for a little while. They're talking about some of the new technology they're seeing. The world is kind of in transition, and they've come to the agreement that dragons are the best form of travel, even over some of the new forms of travel that they're starting to see. So, here we go in chapter 12. An excellent point. Zephyr begins setting up their bedrolls. But you have to admit, dragons are the best form of travel. Only with a saddle. Otherwise, you get a chapped ass. Valens fully laughs at that, taking his bedroll from Zephyr and setting it up himself before settling into it. Are you taking first watch since you already slept, Eyton? As per usual. But I don't think we'll need more than one watch tonight. I'll wake you guys at dawn. Neither of the dragons protest, each settling into their bedrolls and falling almost immediately asleep. Eyton continues to clean the saddle, paying extra attention to the areas that come into contact with Valens' scales. The black dragon hadn't mentioned anything, but before he had dozed off during their flight, Eyton had noticed a small rub beginning to form, and he worried over whether the metal plate was wearing the leather too thin. He couldn't discern any spots where the leather appeared thin, though, and after a while he rubbed the leather with a conditioner and set it aside on a blanket to dry. Then he rifled through his pack and found the journal he'd purchased in the first town they had visited as a trio. He'd started taking notes there, recording little facts and ideas he ran across as they traveled. He finds his pen, a new novelty he thoroughly enjoyed, since the ink was contained within rather than needing an external inkwell, and opened it and the journal. The journal is almost half full now, and he begins doodling on a blank page. Valens in flight, wearing the saddle with him aboard. Zephyr's smaller, more elegant form curling below. Then he jots down notes about the day, where they'd been, what they'd seen in that city, the horseless carriages, the communicators, and both dragons' commentary on those things. His own thoughts, spells he wants to try. That thought prompts him to go digging in his bag again, looking for the little spell book he'd found a couple stops ago. It hadn't been obviously a spell book at first. It actually looked something like a traveler's diary or an adventure log. But he'd bought it anyway, because something about it called to him. Upon further inspection, he'd been delighted to discover that it had a few low-level air mage spells scrawled in it, and he had been excited to try them out. Valens had frowned at the idea at first, but eventually agreed to let Eyton try one he deemed not too dangerous. It had gone well, and Valens had conceded that Eyton could try the others as long as he did so using low pull when they were somewhere safe. Midnight in the middle of nowhere is pretty safe. Eyton flips through the little spell book, peering at the notes in the dim firelight. Zephyr always set the flame burning low but warm, so he didn't complain. He brought his magic to the surface, deliberately grabbing the low end of the spectrum, orange and red, rather than his normal mid-high blue and green. The spellbook is more notes and instructions on feelings rather than a step-by-step guide, so it's not precise, but Eyton begins to feel for the tiny currents of air around him, grabbing at a few and harnessing them together. He sends them toward the fire, getting the flame to burn a bit higher and brighter, then moves them away. Simply manipulating the currents was something he'd been able to do instinctively since he first got his magic, but controlling speed, density, and exact direction was harder. The tornado shield, as he called it, that he'd first done for Valens when they first met, was something he did out of instinct and desperation, not something he did out of conscious thought. He toyed with the currents for a bit before turning his thoughts to something intentional. He focused on a nearby tree, sending the currents into its branches to make the leaves sway gently. Then he upped the intensity of the currents, shaking the branches to make leaves and little hard seed balls fall to the earth. He turns his attention to those seed balls, making the air dense around them and trying to lift them. He managed to get one a short distance off the ground, no more than a couple fingers' width, before he loses control over the air's density and it slips back to the earth. He curses quietly under his breath, scowling at the little seed ball. He flicks his gaze to Valens and Zephyr, both soundly asleep, and ups his pull a little to purple. He tries again, making the air dense around the seed ball and lifting it from the earth. It gets a full hand's width from the ground this time before the density gives out, dropping it to the earth. He growls, upping his pull again, this time to green, his max. He focuses on the seed ball, lifting it up with the dense air, green flaring brightly over his arms. The little seed ball gets a solid foot off the ground this time, and Eyton smirks, spinning it around with the air currents for a minute. Off to his right, something rustles a bush, and Eyton jumps, spinning to face the forest. In doing so, he releases the small air currents, the dense air, and the seed ball. The combination of these three things being released at once causes them all to fly into the tree Eyton had been messing with, snapping a small limb off the tree and sending it crashing to the ground. Valens is up immediately at the sound of the crash, leaping from his bedroll and landing in a low stance, magic flared to the highest burnished gold Eyton had ever seen, ready to face off with whatever was threatening their camp. Zephyr is a heartbeat behind him, her magic flared bronze and green, teeth bared, feather-studded hair wild around her face. Valens' gaze pins Eyton, narrowing when he notes the color in the mage's cheeks. "What did you do?" Eyton drops his gaze, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sorry." "What did you do?" "I was just trying out one of those new spells, trying to make the air dense enough to lift an object off the ground, but something moved and I lost control." "Eyton!" Valens straightens, his magic falling away. "What did I tell you about being safe when you try new things with your magic?" I'm gonna go ahead and stop. I could go on, but the scene gets better. I'm gonna pause there though, because the last time I read, I gave you guys badass Eyton, who had figured out his magic and was facing off against a white dragon. And in this scene, you get cinnamon roll naive Eyton, who hasn't figured out his magic, who doesn't know what he's doing, who's like, "I just wanted to pick up the seed ball off the ground using my magic instead of having to pick it up myself." Versus then in chapter 34, where I read last time, when he stands up to Alperon and says, "Come at me, bro." Like, just the contrast between the way this character is growing and changing. I constantly go back to the beginning of the book to look at Eyton in the beginning and see the growth from beginning to where I'm at currently and the end, and then to track reasonable growth for him from book 1 into book 2 and then into book 3, which, yes, I already have plotted. I don't have any of it written yet, but I've got much of it plotted, at least up here. So I love getting to see the characters grow and change. 100,000 words with these characters. 100,000. And I have some random scenes in my Google Drive that I'm not even using, that haven't even been touched. And so I've got some scenes that exist that aren't in this book, or that exist for book 2 or book 3 that you guys won't even see yet, but that I love and that I can't wait to share, and I can't wait to get to that point so that you guys can see the growth and the change and the shift in these characters that I have spent so much time with. So, yeah, we're at 100,511 words. And obviously it's a raw draft. I mean, it's not a first draft, but it's still raw, and it's feeling really, really real. I'm looking at the outline on my Google Doc, and I've got it kind of charted, that last little bit. I'm in fall. I've broken this book up by seasons. I started in fall. I went to winter, to spring, to summer. I'm back in fall. I'm going to go back into the winter. I'll have a 1 year later, so we're in winter again when we start book 2. And it feels really real and really exciting, but nerve-wracking and kind of bittersweet that pretty soon I'm going to be done with this one, and I'm going to start querying and sending it out into the world to see if it can get published and then really go out into the world where other people get to see it, and where these babies, these characters that I have kept to myself, that have just been mine, that I have grown and loved, will get their little wings, hopefully, and start to fly. So I'm going to end my video there because it's getting pretty long, and Thanks for bearing with me, and thanks for hanging out with me on this journey. As I know I didn't start posting until about 50,000 words, because it wasn't until 50,000 words that it felt like a novel. So now it's really a novel, and I've got probably another 20,000 words to go. I don't know, maybe I'll keep it a little shorter than that, but here we are, 100,000 words. The next milestone will be 110,000 if I hit that. If I don't, then I will post again when the book is finished. But I guess you guys will just have to wait for the next post to find out which one it is. So, as always, thanks for hanging out for me, for being a part of this journey, for coming along on the ride. And I'll see you next time, where there is no place like tomorrow.